If the sight of a large chunk of a man's private parts caught in the teeth of a zipper is funny, and I'm not saying it isn't, then have I got a movie for you. Wit and urbanity be damned. This film is tasteless and sophomoric and proud of it. It's also fitfully amusing and ultimately kind of heartwarming in a twisted sort of way, but only to the degree that you are able to stomach copious amounts of the aforementioned qualities. And that is a review by Michael O'Sullivan from the Washington Post in July of 1998 about the film There's Something About Mary. Hello and welcome to Total 90s Recall. I'm Molly.
And I'm Chloe.
And this is the podcast where we are rewatching 90s films and asking ourselves, are these really as good or bad as we remember? Chloe, what's your relationship with this film? Had you seen it before? Was this your first time seeing it?
I'd definitely seen this film before.
Yeah.
And when you suggested that we watch it, I did
Did I suggest it? Because I think you suggested it.
No, you suggested it. Don't pretend you didn't.
Yeah, but I gave two options and you're like, let's do There's Something About Mary.
Okay. But I think I
have the receipts, people. I have the WhatsApp messages. I gave two options, but she chose this one.
I think it's because the other option was like, I don't know, gonna be a really long film. And I was like, let's do the shorter film.
Fair enough.
So yes, I saw it as a teenager. I don't entirely remember the circumstances, probably blanked out by just the general shock of the shot of Ben Stiller's Flies. And of course, as teenagers, we're all completely fascinated / horrified by the hair gel scene.
Yeah.
And I was probably a bit too young to understand all of the kind of bodily realities of things at that time. So I was a bit like, can semen really be mistaken for hair gel? Is that really a thing? And according to this film, it can, and I guess we'll just have to go with it. That is one of the many contrivances of this film, that Cameron Diaz's character, Mary, would do that. And also that she would like reach out and just grab it and use it in her own hair. That in itself is very weird and unhygienic. But okay, it has to happen for the extremely strained gag to happen. And cinema history was forever altered by the sight of Cameron Diaz's hair.
Oh man, I like you. I don't remember exactly when and where I saw this, but it definitely was I definitely remember seeing it. I feel like with other people, like with friends on a VHS, probably at a sleepover. Saw it multiple times. Multiple? That seems excessive. I'm gonna go once or twice, but it definitely
once it stays with you forever.
I think I think it just reverberates in your head, but it definitely at the time I remember mostly my guy friends being like, "Oh my god, it's the funniest film ever! It's so funny! Look how funny this film is." And there were definitely things, and we'll get into it. And I think there are clever comedy. I don't know if mechanics is the right word, but things that I think is funny actually. But on a rewatch, which we'll get into, I'm like, huh. But yeah, I definitely remember at the time, people were like, it's so funny. And it did have critical acclaim. Like it still has like I think 83% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah, it comes up in best comedies of all time.
All the time. All the time. Which again, the point of this podcast is, do we think it does? We'll get into it. This was released in the U.S. on July 15th, 1998. And then on the 29th of September, 1998 in the U.K., so a few months later, its budget was $23 million. Do you want to guess at its box office, Chloe?
I think the box office was large.
$369 million.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Yeah, it did very well. It was directed by Peter and Bob Farley, also known as the Farley brothers. This was their follow-up to Dumb and Dumber and Kingpin. It was written by the Farleys and also Ed Dechter and John J. Strauss. It's starring, of course, Cameron Diaz. She was, this is late 90s. The Mask was her first film. My Best Friend's Wedding. This is like peak Cameron Diaz. Matt Dillon, her boyfriend at the time. Ben Stiller, Lee Evans, Chris Elliott, W. Earl Brown. We'll get into it. Sarah Silverman. Love it. And of course, Brett Favre. Chloe, we've said all these things about this film, but if somebody's like, wait, what exactly happened in this film? Can you tell the listeners?
Why, with dubious pleasure, I can summarize the plot. So it centers on Ted, played by Ben Stiller. He can't get over his high school would-be sweetheart, Mary, played by Cameron Diaz. She is a girl who he nearly took to the prom, but which, due to a series of extremely unfortunate and downright humiliating events, prevented him from taking her to the prom. And he hasn't seen her since. His married friend Dom suggests that he hire a PI to track her down, and he suggests Pat, played by Matt Dillon, to find Mary. But as Pat stakes out Mary's apartment, he decides he likes her for himself and tries to put Ted off the scent, and he moves to Miami to kind of inveigle his way into Mary's life. Ted decides he's going to meet Mary nevertheless and drives down to Miami. And when he eventually gets there, after yet more seriously unfortunate events, he discovers there are several men trying to trick their way into being Mary's boyfriend. And I think hijinks ensues is not remotely the way to summarize it. I think lots of a series of violence towards people and animals occurs, and it's all extremely humiliating.
Yes. And we should say, like, Mary's smoking hot because it's Cameron Diaz. And, like, yeah, all these. And the reason I say that is because when she comes down for prom, I'm like, she's just beautiful. Like, I'm just like, you're just a beautiful human. So, Chloe, I had reactions rewatching. Actually, let me first tell you. My first reaction to rewatching this film is I fell asleep. I fell asleep like three quarters of the film in, and I was like, oh, and I woke up and it was like almost like ending, and I was like, oh no, and I rewound it, and I was like, I will finish this tomorrow, and that's what I did. So that was one of my first reactions.
Right.
What was yours? What were your first reactions? What were your reactions?
Well, actually more positive than falling asleep.
I have others, but that was just one of them.
So I was preparing myself for this to be really gross out and really tasteless, and to just basically be offended all the way through.
Yes.
But I will say I remembered the most gross out bits pretty accurately. I think I was kind of almost physically bracing myself as the reveals came through. I was like, oh yeah, I know what this is about. Oh yeah, oh my God, like a full body shudder kind of coming through. I have to say, actually, like that opening scene where he basically gets his genitals caught in a zipper, is actually quite exquisitely constructed in this really awkward way. Because you keep on seeing and hearing the reactions to each new person who comes in and sees it, even though in really ridiculous ways, like the cop just sticks his head through the bathroom window and that kind of stuff. But you think to yourself, oh, okay, we're just gonna be told what's happened. And then it goes and shows you in full close-up, which on a cinema screen must have been quite an intense experience for the unwitting audience. And I think the way that it kind of rolls on that opening scene is it's almost like an anxiety dream. Like it just gets worse and worse and worse. It's like every man's most humiliating nightmare. And it's very funny. So actually I have to say I found it a lot funnier than I expected. And there are moments where the writing kind of almost does hold up, like when the serial killer is in the car. He's got quite a funny monologue. But there are aspects of it that leave you shaking your head as a person living 30 years later. You're like, oh no, I don't know about this being committed to screen.
No, I felt exactly the same way. I think there's some bits, and I do mean bits, like comedy bits that are just like comedy gold, like the whole like zipper thing, because it just keeps upping and upping and upping and upping. And it's just like, that's a good, what I feel like is this is a bunch of good comedy bits just kind of strung together. And actually, I gotta say that I was disappointed in them showing, and I get that that's part of the Farley brothers thing is showing the
Mm.
gross, and that's part of their thing. But I actually think it's like funnier if you don't show it. Cause again, in our imagination, like what I had in my
Mm.
imagination was like much different than what I saw.
Do you mean as in like the close-up shot of his
Yeah,
flies?
I
Do you
was
know?
mhm.
Yeah, I disagree. I feel like because it ekes out, and you're
Yeah,
like, oh, they're not actually going to show this to me.
and then they do,
And then
and
they
you're like,
do. I think I remember that shock of first seeing it when I was a teenager and being like, oh, that God, what am I imagining? And then they show it to you and it is as horrible as you
yes,
can
as you
imagine.
think. Yeah, yeah. I don't
I
know, I
don't
think
know
it
if
could
it's physically possible, but
yes,
yeah.
I don't know if it is physically possible. I could go either way. Part of me is like, I think but I think to be fair, you make a good point, is like, oh, like, then you actually see it, and it is like a, "Oh my god," and it
It
is like,
plays with
"Is
your
that?"
expectations.
Yeah, and that so what hit for me this time is I was like, "Oh, this is because when I saw this, I was a teenager. I've performed comedy, I've written comedy, and so there were, like, a lot of the comedy bits I really appreciated, and this is, like, upping the ante and upping the ante
Mm,
and putting Ben Stiller in these, like, terrible situations. I also thought the hair gel/cum scene, that wasn't as big of a deal to me this time. Like, I remember
mm,
watching it because everybody was talking about it, and I was like, "Oh my god, it's gonna be
mm,
crazy." And then it was quicker than I remember, and that's not a knock on it. That is just it just didn't linger as much as I remember in my head. But I think it's
mm,
probably because it was, as a teenager, as a young teen, God, I was, I was a very young teen. Um, you hear this talked up and it's talked up in your head, and you watch it, and then now as an adult, I'm like, yeah, whatever.
mm.
So yeah, so those kinds I really appreciated certain comedy bits, and I was like, "Oh, that's really clever," and how it those bits hit differently, that scene hit differently. The thing that stuck with me rewatching this was this film, while she does have girlfriends, which we'll get into, and I do like that, but to me, this film really there's something about Mary because she's a guy's girl. She likes
Mm,
football, she plays golf, she does all these, like, guys, girls things, and it just
mm,
I don't know why and she's beautiful, right? And she's kind, and
mm.
she's all these things.
And
And
she's
so
into like nerdy schmucks. That's
exactly.
her type.
Yes, that is her type, and, like, I think that's one reason that maybe guys loved this, and I think, this is '98, and so when we're thinking about, like, '98 into, like, early aughts cinema and cinema in loose quotes, but, like, movies that were made when we're we're thinking, like, "This is not cinema," you know what I mean? But anyway, but yeah, when we're thinking about like, early aught cinema, I don't know how you feel, but I feel like there was this definite theme around like guys, girls, and this kind of maybe started it, but there's this theme of just like grossing out. And I feel like you can see kind of the
Mm,
beginnings of it, and to be fair, again, Dumb and Dumber, early 90s, like it wasn't like this was
mm.
the first, but I really feel like after this, you can really see this type of film percolating throughout the
Yeah.
noughties into the early 2000s.
Yeah, and it probably is quite influential on some sort of really abysmal British comedy films as well. And yeah, I think it was that it's coarse humor, as the
Yeah.
Wikipedia page puts it. And yes, definitely. I mean, we'll come back to the style of humor because I think there's more to say about it. But in terms of the gross out comedy, it feels like yes, the shackles are off, and now
Yeah.
we can start showing some really gross stuff. And I've got a recommendation at the end of this
Ooh,
episode
I can't wait.
for the ultimate follow up for for this kind of film. But yeah, I definitely think to go back to your point about how Mary's portrayed. She's not quite a manic pixie dream girl
No.
in the
Fair.
the style of Natalie Portman in
Mm.
Garden States.
Yeah.
She's not quite kind of I'm so quirky, blah blah blah. But she is definitely a woman written by a man in as much as like she's
Yes.
obsessed with football and she loves beer and and she has legs that go on for days. You're
you
like,
have put that perfectly.
you
Honestly,
can't,
you have.
You can't drink beer and look like that.
Yes. No, you literally have put this perfectly. She was written by a man. This is a man's dream woman. She does not exist in reality. Sorry to interrupt you, but you just put that so perfectly.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, I was slightly relieved, like, she does have female friends.
Yes.
So she's got Magda, who is, I don't know, her kind of live-in landlord, who is sort of, you know, in many ways quite a misogynistic construction. You know, like kind of like, here's the ugly witch woman, but it's also quite funny. But she has also got her female friends who she goes out for brunch with, and then she seems to mostly talk exclusively talks about dating with. But she does also have a job.
She's a doctor.
Successful career. She's an orthopedic surgeon or something.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
She has money, she has hobbies, and she, you know, cares about her family, and, you know, so she's got a life. It's just that her judgment is contrived to be incredibly oblivious.
Yes.
And she seems to just love these, as I say, nerdy schmucks, and gives them a pass when they say absolutely idiotic things to her if she's already interested. And yeah, you're kind of a bit like, oh, I don't believe in her as a person. But then I guess I don't entirely believe in any of this story. You give it a pass because it's comedy, like very heightened comedy. But I think for me, we should not lose sight of the fact that this is a comedy about a woman who has spent her life being stalked.
Yes. And they're just making light of it. And not
really,
by one person, by multiple people.
They don't really like engage meaningfully with Mary's point of view on this. She's kind of, you know, it's a weird subject matter for a comedy. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna be generous rather than being a joyless feminist and say I give it a pass. Like, it made me laugh. And actually, even the reveal with Dom being, I mean, I could kind of see that coming, but Dom being Wiggy, the ex-boyfriend who stalked her and who she had a restraining order on. And they play it for laughs. So instead, like, you think he's going to attack her. What he actually does is he raids her shoe cupboard. Yes. Tries to steal her shoes.
Which actually, like, let's give it to the Farley brothers. Like, that's funny. Right? Like, that's hilarious. You know, they're it's ridiculous. It's funny. It's not sadistic. You know what I mean? There's not sadistic. He's not trying to get something sexual from her. Well, I mean, in some ways, you know, some people, we could go into that.
He wants to possess her, but mostly in this.
Her shoes.
Yeah, her shoes. But I mean, it's mad. It's, you know, I suppose the thing I'll say in favor of this plot line is that it's basically ends up suggesting, and it kind of says all the way through long, that stalking is creepy.
Yeah.
And that these guys are deplorable and freakish. The fact that Ted walks away and does a good turn by sort of basically saying, I'll bring back your ex-boyfriend who was actually a nice guy, really, and setting, you know, the wrongs right, and demonstrating that he wants the best for her rather than to possess her, and that he's not an asshole, you know, but only once he's been caught out for hiring Pat as a PI. You know, so in some ways it's better than Sleepless in Seattle on that front.
Because she didn't even know him. But here's the thing, like, bless him, like, I will say, he wasn't a stalker. It was this girl that he always thought about. I don't know. Now I'm talking myself out of it. I don't know. Like, in some ways, he's not a stalker. It's just like that person you just can't let go of, though he's talking about his therapist and Dom for years. But then again, she talked about him. Remember, like, when Woogie, at the end, Woogie's like, she's like, I only went on one date and it didn't happen. I told you this. I don't feel like he didn't, I guess he did deceive her because he was
he met her again under false pretenses. I guess it's also, what did he brief? You know, it sounds as if he was expecting to have biographical information being fed to him by Pat rather than just like her number. Like, you can almost understand if someone hires a PI to get someone's phone number to contact them, and then if they're not interested, disappear, then I could be like, okay, fine. But Pat's mission goes far beyond that.
Yeah.
In my head, I was contrasting it with the kind of noughties pickup advice culture that kind of came up,
Yeah.
you know, a few years later.
Yes.
And all that kind of awful stuff of, you know, ridiculous concept of negging and sort of tricking women into sex, you know, kind of browbeating women into sex by like creating this idea that there's a hierarchy of men's value.
Yes.
And that women need to be basically sort of seduced rather than treated nicely and met on a level as fellow human beings, which is actually what women would like. But this idea, you know, that was something that really kind of snowballed maybe in the decade after. And Dom is that kind of proto pickup artist guy.
Yeah.
You know, he actually says "milady" at one point, and then later on he gaslights her and calls her a cock tease, which reminder, this is a woman going about her day, her life. She didn't do anything. And
repeatedly telling him, go away. You're supposed to be 400 feet away from me. I've changed my name because of you. And but like to your point, this snowballed into like early noughties, like, oh, these girls are cock tease and these and that. And
just by existing, by breathing,
just by existing, just by being like pretty and not saying yes to everything that I want.
And loving beer and sports.
And loving beer.
And all of that then laid the ground for kind of incel culture and kind of red pill misogyny. Which
and we're not saying the Farley brothers are responsible for incels.
But I think
we're not
it
prudes.
kind of,
like this is fun. This is a funny movie. But there's parts of it where we're looking back 30 years later and it's like,
I think it's more just like tracing a thread through the culture, and then you can kind of see how this type of story and portrayal of women and relationships slightly leads on to other things. However, as I say, I was contrasting it in my head and I was going, but this is nevertheless a film from a time when it was still obvious that a relationship mustn't be based on trickery and control. And that's what the story is telling us. You know, like the review at the beginning, there is something quite kind of sweet natured about it, in as much as that Ted realizes that what the right thing is to do, which is to walk away and cry and sob loudly in the street.
It was so funny. But again, like, props to Ben Stiller. Physical comedy, definitely his, like, you know, the crying was ugly and perfect. And then the fish, like when Warren was fishing and the hook got stuck in his mouth.
Oh my God.
Also well done to the production team, the makeup team, like, well done.
Yeah.
But a lot of good, like, physical humor. So well done to Ben Stiller and the Farley brothers, which are known for that.
When he ducks down when the dog flies at him and goes out through the open window behind him. It's hilarious.
The dog's like on top of the car, and he's like, "Oh my God, I forgot about the dog," and like quickly grabs the dog. It's great.
I mean, Puffy, I mean, you could tell when it's just a kind of a model dog. It almost adds to the humor because it is just so totally fake and so ridiculous.
Well, and also Magda's boobies, we saw her, like how ridiculous they were. Again, it's ridiculous. It's funny. Wasn't necessary though. But then again, I think that's their humor, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and that exactly is my thinking about the way that this film is written, is that, you know, although it's got a fairly sweet message, I guess, in as much as be genuine and you'll get the girl of your dreams, as opposed to being a weird, creepy asshole. It's got a lot of kind of teen boy shock humor. So there's fat jokes.
Ew.
You know, the thing about Magda, I mean, Magda's tan is almost black.
But I think that's the point. Like, and I feel like she gets darker. Is that just me? I felt like
I think she does. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the jump scare of her prosthetic withered breasts in the binocular view, it is treated like a horror movie. And actually, it made me think of The Shining. There is literally a very similar, moment shot in The Shining, which is, meant where Jack Torrance is like, going after a kind of beautiful, seductive woman, and then suddenly she appears to be, a withered old hag.
Yes. Farley Brothers, Kubrick, you're totally right. Very same vein, Chloe.
There's a direct line between Kubrick
Direct
and the
line.
Farrelly brothers,
Direct
clearly.
line.
I have to ask, though, why are the women undressing next to open windows?
Yeah. To be fair, though, like, thank you for this film and other films like it, because now, like, growing up, I was like, oh my God, open window, like, close it, close it. I'm very conscious of windows now.
Do
But
you
yeah,
really?
why?
Would you not be conscious generally?
I don't know. Like, who knows, Chloe? We don't know what would happen in an alternate universe if I had never seen If There's Something About Mary and seen like all these open windows. Would I have just been like, oh, open window, who cares? Nobody's going to
just
see
take
me.
my bra off in front of an open window.
Screw it. Mary hadn't seen There's Something About Mary, so she didn't know like the precarious position she was in. You know what I'm saying? So like in some ways, thank you, Farley Brothers, because that made me think, open window?
Yeah.
Can't take my clothes
Yeah.
off.
The other thing I'd say about the humor, not just the teen boy shock stuff, it's what I would actually go so far as calling edgelord humor.
Yeah.
Which is the sort of thing that is rife online now. I think it went away and came back in male-dominated online spaces, which I guess is all online spaces, basically.
Yeah.
Like 4chan, the nastier bits of Reddit, and then obviously rife in Twitter since Elon Musk's takeover. I feel like Grok on X must have been trained on the scripts of the Farrelly brothers, amongst other things. But it's very much... It's that sort of thing, like what it wants to do is it wants to tiptoe up to the edge of what's acceptable and then just kind of just dip a toe over it and be like, oh, but, we've got the term from last week, plausible deniability.
Yeah.
We're not actually engaging in the prejudices of these characters, but we're going to have the characters say these things that you're not meant to say anyway. And that to me is the issue.
Like, I want to get into that, especially in the Warren of it all. But what that made me think of, like, Jackass. Like, after this, we have the whole Jackass TV series and films, which I think they're like one just released or is about to release Jackass Forever. But like this kind of begot this was one of the forefathers of Jackass, right? Because it's very similar humor. But to that point, what is the term you used that I Lord? What did you
edgelord humor?
Oh my God, I love it. I think this is very nuanced. They're making jokes about certain marginalized communities, but they're also saying, oh, but we're not saying that. Like other people are saying, like the bad people say that.
The reprehensible characters are saying
they're reprehensible, but you're still putting that out there.
Yeah, and Mary doesn't really so obviously the scene I'm thinking of particularly is when Matt Dillon gets talking to Mary, that Matt Dillon's character, Pat. He says the arsler. And the joke in it all is that he thinks that he's showing off a full story about how he is really great and works with learning disabled people, but he uses all the wrong terminology and says all the wrong things and makes up a story about a boy called Mongo who lives in a cage, whom he lets out of the cage to basically treat like a dog. And Mary's horrified, but she doesn't run away from him.
She doesn't correct him.
She tries to, but then doesn't.
Like, that's the thing. Like, she's too, she's too polite. And it's like
she's too passive. Yeah.
But also at the same time, like in high school, she like stood up for Warren. Like Ted did, and then he got hit in the face, and then she did. But then that's the only time you really see all of her standing up for him is very passive. And I also don't know, to be fair, maybe she's just like too shocked and like too caught off guard that he used that she's like, oh, wait a minute, what?
We're attributing too much. We're attributing too much like depth to her characterization.
I think no, you're completely right.
I don't think the script just wants, I think that's the point, is I think the script just wants to have a horrible character say something shocking and awful that you can't say in normal life.
Yes.
And it has that, you might say it's a kind of cathartic thing for the audience, but I would say it's basically, it's sort of allowing the viewer to laugh along too at at the use of that word
Yeah.
and be like, oh yeah, we get
Yes,
to hear the
absolutely.
arsler. And actually, and like, oh, it's so edgy, when actually, I don't know, it ultimately, to me, it feels like punching down. And when I
Yes.
laughed, I was laughing at the physical comedy and the sort of awful, embarrassing things that could happen to anyone, rather than at the kind of like edgelord humor.
Yeah.
But
And I think
yeah, do you agree?
no, I completely agree. And I think there's also some nuance to this, which I want to get into when we talk about what aged well and what aged badly,
Mm,
particularly when we're talking about the Warren character. But to your point, it's like, oh, it's the whole thing when marginalized people are gaslit. It's like, oh, I was just joking. It's
mm.
just a joke. Like,
I'm just
you
being
know,
ironic.
just being
Yeah.
ironic, like, it's no big deal, I'm
Mm,
just joking, and it's like, "No, you're not just joking, that's clearly what you really feel," and, again, I'm not trying to be a priss about this, like, it is a funny film, but
mm.
looking back on it with a 2026 lens, it's like, these kinds of jokes snowball into into othering people and saying that, "Oh,
Yeah.
it's actually okay to use the R word." It's not okay
Yeah.
to use the R word.
Yeah, I completely agree, because I think what it is, it that word othering is the perfect way to put it, because basically it's inviting you to laugh at people who are different.
Yeah.
And I think
Yes!
you kind of are being invited to laugh at the learning disabled people. I I don't
Him and
I
Magda, who's
yeah.
like, she's an older
Mm.
again, she's old out to pasture, right? Like, who cares about
Yeah,
her?
and she's
Y
oblivious.
Yeah,
She thinks she's hot, and that's part of the humor. So
yeah,
it's that kind of thing where it's not laughing along. Like, I think there's absolutely ways in which you could make a comedy with this amount of learning disabled and disability representation, like this number of characters, but
yeah,
it's not this film.
yeah,
It's punching down is
totally.
ultimately how it feels. And because it is kind of going, ha ha, you know,
Yeah,
we can mock them a little bit,
yeah,
even though obviously our two nice main characters are,
would
are
never do that.
treat yeah, treat
Yeah,
them with respect and dignity, but nevertheless, we're also going to have our cake and eat it, so say the
yeah, and,
filmmakers, and
you said
have
it
a sequence in which, yeah, in
absolutely.
which Matt Dillon is is basically torturing all these
Yeah,
people.
and
Um,
they are saying, like, these are, like, Matt Damon, the other guy, and, like, the Chris Elliott, and I forgot the pizza man who, faked
oh
it till he
yes,
made it.
Tucker, I think his
Tucker.
name is.
Yeah, and, like, the film is clearly showing, like, these are horrible people, and horrible people say and do these things, but it's still at the expense of marginalized and othered people,
Yeah, to
and so
some
that's
degree
where
it
I
is.
think it
Yeah.
gets a bit like, "Ooh."
Mm.
I wanna get into that later, but before we get into, like, what aged well and what aged terribly, what did you think of Matt Dillon's mustache?
Oh my god. Well, actually, this is the thing that I do actually feel has aged badly slash well, in a very weird way, because it's basically like a kind of infinity loop. So those of us of a certain age who can remember the 80s and the 90s, I think we have a particular view on moustaches. And I think that Matt Dillon's moustache is meant to signal that he's louche and he's creepy.
Yes.
Like, the first thing we see of him is his kind of cheesecake porn calendars. He stands up in his office and his flies are fully undone. And he's got this like kind of little kind of creepy caterpillar moustache. Um, so I think, like, as a millennial with a cultural memory of this film,
Yes.
I read moustaches as kind of creepy. But
Totally.
now maybe not all, but many, a large proportion of 20-something lads in this country today in
Yes.
2026 have these thin little moustaches, and they have no cultural memory of
No.
There's Something About Mary or the 80s for that matter. And so
No.
for them, it's like stylish.
What are your feelings on mustaches in general? Like, is it good? Is it bad? Is, like, thin mustaches bad, but big mustaches are
Do you
good?
know
Or are
what?
they all just
Like,
creepy?
I feel like I'm wrong, because I don't feel as if I can call myself a humanist or a feminist and make declarations about what
Okay,
other
that's
people do with their body.
yeah.
But
is fair.
that caveat aside, I don't like moustaches. I think that I think they make men look like Mac Dillon's character in There's Something About
Creepy.
Mary.
Okay, I
Yeah.
completely agree with you. And there are two exceptions, and only two. And one is a recent one, and I'm shocked at myself. Okay, so the first one is Magnum PI, Tom Selleck.
Of course.
It does. The
Tom
mustache
Selleck,
works for him. Like, I can't imagine him without a mustache. It would be weird. It would just look weird. And, like, that actually would be creepy with him without a mustache. Tom Selleck.
Yeah, he's a genuine guy, though.
He's a genuine guy.
Yeah.
The second one, and this shocks me, and I wasn't prepared for this, but I gotta admit, when I saw Leonardo DiCaprio with a mustache at the Oscars, I was like, okay, damn. Because I've never been like a Leo girl, except for Romeo plus Juliet. That's was my peak Leo moment. But yeah, look it up, Chloe. Look it up.
Oh,
Leo.
it's quite distinguished. It looks a bit
so
Poirot-esque. I'm looking at it now. Yes.
And I was like not expecting this. I don't know what's happened, but I was like, okay, now I'm on the Leo train. Like, that looks good. If you haven't looked it up, like, look it up. We'll put it on our Instagram. But like,
it does, because it's like distinct bushy moustache wings. It has separate parts. It's not just this little caterpillar that's
it's not
laid down and died on his top lip. Yeah.
No.
Anyway, I feel awful and wrong for objectifying the menfolk.
It's fine. I don't care.
But they spent decades doing it in
and you know
cinema
what?
anyway.
We're all about equality on this
women.
podcast. So we're balancing things out. Should we move on to what aged well and what aged badly or terribly?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So I'm going to start with what aged well and what aged terribly, because I feel like my answer is kind of nuanced. And you cannot talk about this film we've already started talking. We've been dancing around it. We've been putting our fishing line out there and catching something. I don't know. Anyway, but it's the Warren of it all. So part of me, I wanted to kind of come up with my own feelings about this before I kind of did some research, and because I want to be like, am I informed? Am I like, and like I've worked with disabled people. I have disabled people in my family, but that is not my lived experience. So let's get that straight out of the way. And so I feel like
the film doesn't reflect your lived experience.
Disability is not my lived experience. So I'm
see.
not going to be like
I'm
I'm speaking for the disabled community. So all of my views are as an able-bodied person. And so I might be stumbling through this. It might get messy. And so this is a conversation. So I want to preface it with that. But the nuance of it is, what I did like about it, in a lot of ways, Warren was never really the butt of the joke, except for when, obviously, we've already talked about they call him the R word, but he was always kind of the foil. You know, it was always like he was the foil to other people's plans. He was the one causing chaos. And so I did appreciate that. But my question is, where I think it gets a little tricky as we look back on it, is if he is the foil, why did he have to be disabled? A. B, we already talked about, why did they have to use words like the R word? Why did they have to have a guy who's faking it as a disabled guy trying to get married? And again, why did we have an able-bodied person playing that character, which still happens today? And I will give it to, I forget which Farley brothers said it, but one of them did say they do regret not using an able-bodied actor. So I think it's nuanced. I think in some ways the representation is there. And so he's there, and that's important to see these people exist in society. And he's never the butt of the joke. He's just the foil to create jokes. But at the same time, he's still a foil. He's still like considered a problem in the movie, to the other characters. He's something to overcome. And yeah, they're using him to use words like the R word. That's how, so like, whether it aged, I don't know, I would say it aged well. And I don't think it, but I think on the terrible part, I think it's like, looking back on this, I don't think this character would exist if this was remade today. I think also if this character did exist, if it was remade today, that it would be a disabled actor. I don't know. What are your thoughts on Warren?
I don't know enough about. I mean, I don't think it's ever really stated what his condition is.
Yeah.
He's learning disabled, or he's got ASD or something like that. I think in the opening sequence, he when he thinks he's got a thing about his ears, and so when Ben Stiller's character reaches behind his ears to try and do a naff magic trick of giving him a baseball as a gift, he reacts with full blown. He lashes out in fear, and that's clear, but
Yeah.
it's full blown like violence, and he
Yeah.
basically sort of throws him across the room. And I I don't know how realistic that is, but my instincts tell me that that is quite unrealistic portrayal of how a meltdown occurs. I suppose I would say it's slightly unhelpful in a world where there's not
Yes.
many of these people shown
Yeah.
on screen to in the first 5-10 minutes of a film show this guy. He is shown as sort of like very sweet and well-meaning, and
Yeah.
his family love him and blah blah blah. But for him to have this like side to him where he could cause physical damage is, I think, it's unhelpful, let's put it
Yeah.
that way.
Totally.
It
I
it
think
would
you're
it would create a kind of fear and a sense of other in the audience who may not have
absolutely.
encountered people like him.
Yeah, because you don't have enough representation when you get it, you just automatically think, "Oh, they either go into a range or they are really good at numbers like Rain Man." There is no in between.
Yeah.
And I didn't finish what I was saying before is then, I was like, "Okay, I wanna kinda" it was most like I was kind of internalized. I was like I wanted to kinda test myself, check myself when I was kinda
Mm.
reflecting on this, and then I did some research, and honestly, I'm not saying I'm right, but I will say that that the disabled community, they have a nuanced view on it.
Mm.
Just, they felt like in some ways it was nice having the representation, and, he wasn't the butt of the joke, but others said that kind of everything that we've already said. And I will say, I specifically remember at this time people would be like, "Do you have my baseball?" and like making fun of, I don't want to full on
Mm.
do what they were doing,
Yeah.
but they were making, like, not in the film, but audience members, like, people I went to school with, that was, like, a thing people were doing as, like, "Do you have my baseball?"
Mm.
Making fun of that character. So,
Yeah. So they don't see any nuance. Exactly. I think that's
yeah.
always the danger, really. And yeah, I mean, also to your other point, that the fact that Lee Evans' character, Tucker, he's really called Norm, is full on faking his inability to walk. I mean, there's a backstory of like he did actually get a friend to beat him up with a baseball bat, so he was originally injured or something. But like that whole kind of stereotype of the disabled person who was faking it, which is a very kind of poisonous one in
Yep.
British society to this day, because obviously there's this suspicion that anyone who receives benefits might be faking it. And just the way like Lee Evans would have been cast because he's known for his kind of miming and physical comedy and
Yes.
all of that.
And which he was
But
very physical in this.
yeah, but I just found all that thing where he drops his car keys on the floor and he can't reach
Yeah.
it with his crutches. It just felt really dated. Like it felt
Yeah.
like the same way that a 1960s Carry On film would have felt in the
Yeah.
90s. It's kind of a bit Bernard Manning. And it all speaks to that thing of disabled people are a spectacle, and they're there
Yes.
to slightly be a bit of, as you say, they're not exactly the butt of the joke, but the film is slightly kind of edging towards this thing of, haha, but it's funny, really, isn't it?
Yeah. Exactly.
Like with watching so many of these 90s films, you sigh and you go,
Yeah.
yeah, all right. Yeah, okay. So this was funny if you were 14 in
Exactly.
1998.
But they weren't just
But
14-year-olds watching this, they were, like, 18, 19, 20 people. They're still, like, forming their brain, and that
mm,
forms your brain, and then you think
mm.
it's
Or
okay to
what's
laugh at
socially acceptable?
what's
Yeah.
socially acceptable, and therefore you think it's okay to laugh at
Mm.
disabled or marginalized people.
Yeah. To add to that, I mean, I think the humor about gay men is
Mm,
very unreconstructed in this. This was an
yeah.
era when in the UK, the word gay was used as a kind of jokey put down. And like it
Yes.
was used not just colloquially. Chris Moyles, the Radio 1 DJ, so BBC Radio 1, it was almost like a catchphrase. It was part of his vocab. Oh, that's a bit gay. That's a bit rubbish. In that time, it was used in a negative. And this film fully trots out all the stereotypes about gay men, like the group sex at rest stops, the prison rape. And really what it's doing is it's kind of externalizing this anxiety of being mistaken for gay. When Ben Stiller trips and falls in front of a man with his pants down.
Yeah.
It's a pure form of homophobia. It lingers on. The fear of being mistaken for gay is paralyzing. It's not even consciously homophobic, I think.
No.
It's just this whole idea that, God forbid you be mistaken for being gay. And that permeates it.
And to your point, the same thing growing up. It was like, that's so gay. Like, don't be gay, And it wasn't probably until I was in uni that somebody, I don't even know who it was, thank God, to whoever said it. It's like, why are you saying that? That's kind of offensive. And I was like,
yeah,
that's a good point.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is really interesting. These because again, to your point, there's that thought of boys, and I'm going to say boys are conditioned, don't act like a girl, don't be a girl, don't cry, don't do this. And it's like, well, of course, these boys grow into to be men that hate and resent women. When you think of anything feminine or what's perceived as feminine, like emotion, as bad. Anyway, now we digress. We can get into mess. We'll have our bonus episode that I just made up as the positive and toxic masculinity in film. What was kind of most 90s moments, lines, or scenes for you?
Well, I would say the outtakes and the sing along over the credits is
too.
very 90s. The fact that they had Willie Garson, i.e. Stanford from Sex and the City, as one of the friends, I was like, is that? And it's very funny, of course, because he's wearing an awful, hideous wig at the beginning. And
a huge pimple, white head.
Yeah, and he's kind of famously, he's famously bald, and he plays up to that when he plays Stanford in Sex and the City. So I was like, oh, Willie Garson. The Miami Hotel's serious commitment to pastel decor. It's just like, it's just so 90s. It's like, why was that look ever a thing? I just cannot comprehend. I think the fact that the friends, including a young Sarah Silverman, reading out lines from a Lonely Hearts column is very much a time capsule moment. And then also just in terms of filmmaking, I was thinking the use of a bit of a verse and chorus from a pop song that kind of rises up and down along to a montage of short scenes with lyrics that are kind of telling the subtext. They do it with little pieces of history repeating, whatever it's called. Just the soundtrack altogether. But I think just the way the music is mixed in, I was like,
oh, totally.
That feels very 90s. Yeah. How about you?
The singers at the beginning, and throughout.
Oh, I love the singers. Can I just say, I mean, I absolutely loved the ending of this film. So Jonathan Richman is the singer. He and his drummer, they're almost like a kind of Greek chorus throughout. And they're sort of reflecting the feelings Ted has and the story and moving the story along. And they just sort of appeared there in this magical realist way. And the ending of the film is hysterical. And it's just so, what the fuck? Where basically Mary and Ted have their big moment of like, oh, I love you, and they're kissing. And then the weird old guy that Magda's been shagging gets out a rifle and aims to shoot at Ben Stiller's Ted because he wants him out of the way because he's in love with Mary. Because, I mean, dear God.
Because everyone is.
But he misses and shoots Jonathan Richman, the singer, and the singer falls backwards into the sea. And then it cuts to black. And that's the end of the film. And I was like, this is hysterical. What a hilariously nasty and weird ending. It was genuinely hilarious. I love that.
No, it was great. I had all the same things you did. I also added the sing along at the end. Oh, you said that. The montage of all their times together when he's ugly crying. You basically have a montage. and you see all their
Yes.
times. For me, as a USA girl, Checkers, I don't know if this is still in the US, but Checkers is a fast food chain, and
Oh, okay.
it's a fast food chain, and, like, I had that when I was in high school, and I never had it
Mm.
again, but to me, that was just, like, a very 90s thing. Obviously, cellular phones, not cell phones, not
Mm.
mobiles, cellular phones,
Mm.
the term,
We
was
hadn't
very
decided what to call
we didn't. We were
mobiles
still
at that
figuring it
time.
out. We were
Yeah.
still
Yeah.
figuring it out. Do you have any
Mm.
awards you wanna give anyone in this film or
Okay,
anything?
I have 3. Okay.
Okay, great.
Obviously, most appalling close-up, Ben Stiller's
Right.
flies
Yes. Oh
at the
god.
beginning.
Yeah.
But in some ways, best prosthetic because, somebody had to sculpt that thing.
Yeah.
Best hair, Cameron Diaz. Love little kind of 90s bob. But worst hair, Cameron Diaz for that moment.
Nice.
How about you?
So I have most likely to be, if this was made today, the most likely to be a trad wife was Dom's wife.
Oh,
Definitely was she was
yeah.
definitely a trad wife.
That was bizarre, wasn't it? Like
Yeah.
she's making cookies to order. I was expecting there to be some kind of twist that she's actually secretly rageful or she's the stalker or something. Yeah.
Ooh, yeah. Woogie is
Mm.
yeah, I like it. And then most likely to, if this was remade today, the person most likely to be on OnlyFans would be Woogie because he had a foot fetish. So he would be like, "Where are my girls at?"
Oh, right.
Um,
As in he'd have an account, but he wouldn't
yeah.
be like, oh, I thought you meant
N-
like as in he'd
yeah,
be
I don't
like
know. I'll be
selling
honest.
pictures.
I clearly have never been on OnlyFans because I don't know, like, what is the person
Yeah.
called that.
I thought you were going to say Magda. It's like Magda's
Oh,
got
yes!
sheer confidence and would
Magda
be
would be
selling.
on OnlyFans.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. And
Yes.
Dom has a lot of problems. I mean, I think first of all he just needs to get to a doctor because he's got
Yes.
hives.
Chloe, is this film really as good as we remember it or culture thought in 1998? Does it hold up? Is it worth returning to?
I don't know. I feel like it's almost like a film you should see once just so that you know what
Yes.
the hell all of those jokes are about.
Yeah.
But I sort of feel almost like you should maybe be over 25. But then
Yes.
if you're younger, I think a lot of kids would watch it and they might find it funny, but they also might just be like, what is this ancient world that it's set within? Like, I think they might find it, for one thing, a lot of the plot may not happen just simply because of the internet now.
Yes.
I honestly, I'm slightly left speechless on this one. I don't know whether I recommend it or not.
You
How
do make a
about
good.
you?
Well, before I answer, I was going to say you make a good point. Like, what's the most 90s thing about this? The plot. Like, a lot of these,
Mm,
like, if this was made today, it would just be totally rewritten because
mm,
Ted could look her up on Facebook and
mm.
figure
I
out
mean,
things
she's
out.
changed her name
That's
because of the
true.
stalking,
But I
but
feel like
yeah,
Matt Damon wouldn't need to go down to Miami. He would just use
Matt
anything.
Dillon,
Dylan. Matt Damon. Anyway,
Matt Damon, Matt Damon. Matt
different
Damon's been to
movie.
many places, but I don't think it's been to Miami. It's been to Mars. It's been to ancient Greece now.
Yes.
He's
Yes.
he's he's been to,
Normandy. No, he wasn't at
Normandy.
Normandy. He was in somewhere on the Western Front. Doesn't
Yes,
matter.
he was
Okay.
somewhere
What
on the Western Front.
what about
Mm.
okay, so I completely would agree with you. I think if you've never seen this, it's a cultural phenomenon, a comedy phenomenon. And again, structurally, things about this comedy I really like some of the comedy bits I really do like. So I think if you've never seen it, go out and watch it. Just we have our caveats, which you've heard. uh,
See above.
see above. Rewind. Chloe, if somebody liked this or didn't like this film,
Mm.
what are some other films you would recommend someone to watch?
Okay. So I am going to say, if you love this film, then I think you'll probably love American Pie from 1999, directed by Paul Weitz. I think it's like the spiritual inheritor to There's
Yes.
Something About Mary because it's got the raunchy, gross out humor with shocking sight gags. I'll just say that There's Something About Mary did revolting things to Ben Stiller's genitals. And in this, you get to see Jason Biggs doing something unmentionable to an apple pie. And the
Yes.
poster did indeed have a ruined apple pie on it.
Yes.
That was the poster. So then also, I think another Ben Stiller comedy is Meet the Parents
Yeah,
from
great.
2000,
That's
directed by
great.
Jay Roach. So if you enjoyed the kind of awkward dad-boyfriend interaction at the start of There's Something About Mary, and who doesn't, this is, of course, the ultimate in that scenario. It's got Ben Stiller. He is meeting his potential father-in-law, played by Robert De Niro, who is a sadistic ex-CIA, and he basically sort of puts him through the ringer. And the latest sequel, called Focker-in-Law, is coming out this year, and it stars Ariana Grande. It's in that genre. I'm
Yeah.
very much thinking if you like this film. I'm not saying I necessarily did.
Yeah.
In terms of films I do actually recommend, I would say Punch Drunk Love from
Oh, good one.
2002, Paul Thomas Anderson. And I really mean to rewatch this because I think it's quite a surprising film because it's sort of part quite dark drama and part rom-com. And it stars Adam Sandler very much playing against type. And then I would say Bridesmaids from
I have that on my
2011.
list too. Yeah.
Yes, Paul
Yeah.
Feig is the director. And I'll say, so it's got Kristen Wiig. She stars as a woman who's trying and failing to be her best friend, Maya Rudolph's maid of honor. And it's got this kind of gross out humor that you get in There's Something About Mary, but it feels a bit more pointed when it's women
Yes.
doing it, I think.
Yeah.
Shall we say, you've got the Snow White bridal dress boutique that is defiled.
Yes.
And it's sort of taking the piss out of all of the kind of hierarchy and feminine rituals that we're all forced to kind of partake in. And Melissa McCarthy is very funny. So yeah, I think a good pick of yours as well. I
Yes.
approve.
I approve of your pick. Yeah.
Yes.
So to add to those, I would say also, if you're looking for something also high energy, raunchy in places, but the humor is like kind of rooted with like two specific personalities. It also shows, I think it's a positive representation of gay people. I would say Booksmart in 2019, directed by Olivia Wilde. So starring Beanie Feldstein and Caitlin Dever, who is amazing in a lot of stuff, and many others. But they're Billy Lord, Jason Sudeikis, Lisa Kudrow are all on it. But that's a fun, smart comedy. But again, like high on energy, raunchy. I would also say, if you want something like kind of darker, more morally complicated, but still like very sharp writing, and the discomfort comes from the character's own, like their own failures, is In Bruges, 2008, starring Colin Farrell, the Farrellizants. I just made that a word. Anyway, but it's really funny. And then lastly, if you want a positive representation of disabled community, I would say Coda in 2021. It actually won the Best Picture. It actually won Best Picture in 2021. I don't know if it quite deserved that, but it's still a very like sweet, kind movie. But it follows a family that everyone in the family is deaf except for they have one hearing child. And that's what Coda stands for, child of deaf adult. And so it stars Marlee Matlin, Troy Kotsur, who actually won the Oscar for that. Both of them like deaf actors. Daniel Durant, who's also a deaf actor, and Amelia Jones plays their daughter. And it's just a really sweet movie with positive representation of marginalized communities. So so that's what I got. I think that's it. I think we did it, Chloe.
Yeah, we've worked out what there is about Mary. There's something about Mary, and we've figured it out.
If you liked this podcast, please like and subscribe wherever you are listening here. Follow us on Instagram at Total 90s Recall. That's Total 90S Recall. Tell a friend the next time you decide to stalk someone. When you find them finally, tell them about Total 90s Recall and how much you're enjoying this. And you can also email us total90srecall@gmail.com. I'm Molly.
And I'm Chloe.
And we'll see you at the movies.